It is going to be another weird week for NFL DFS with a lot of the key studs on the Week 16 main slate being out for one reason or another, whether it be COVID, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. And it puts us in a position where we have to prioritize the studs we want to use. We have to decide how things will break based on those guys being unavailable and decide where we want to go for the values on what should be a hopefully plentiful value slate in week number 16. We're going to dive on in and get you set for the main slate. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, Week 16 is looking kind of funky, but also a lot to dissect. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little worried about you. You keep looking over your shoulder.
I think Rosa is seeing her reflection in the fireplace. There's like a glass thing in front of the fireplace, and it scared her.
Rosa, your dog, for context.
Yeah, I should clarify that it's a dog and not a human. But now she's staring at her reflection, and I think she's unsettled. She seems comfortable now. Maybe she's become friends with her reflection. I'm not sure. Maybe this is like a metaphor, something deeper.
It's a real
to be identified here.
Teachable moment. Yeah.
Learning. So I'm good now that she's good. Like that's why we were delayed. Like the intro ran longer than usual because she started like barking, and I was like, did something fall into the fireplace? I was very confused, but she's good now. I think maybe for now. We'll see.
We'll have to keep tabs on the situation, which is apropos for this entire week.
Yes, exactly. So how are you?
Well, I'm good. I mean, I'm as good as I can be with respect to this slate and all of the uncertainties. I think it was last week where I really mentioned, I don't know if it was on air, it might have been before the show. I was like, I don't have a good grasp for matchups because I'm just trying to like focus on who's playing, who's in, who's out. It's another week like that. Obviously, I know what the matchups are, but it's less about like digging into matchups and more constantly trying to update expectations for offenses. And for me, I care more about offensive expectations. If your quarterback's in or out, than I do about like specific slot level matchups. So still kind of a week where I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with some of these teams. So it's it's not new because we had it last week, but it's still kind of new in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think that's when you open up the FanDuel player pool, you look at the highest salary guys. There are a lot of guys who are out when you do that. Mm-hmm. It's not quite NBA level where it's like the entire player pool. I'm sure that you've had a grand old time with that, but it is some key players. What we'll do today is break down implications of those key guys potentially being out. Not all of them are assured to be out yet because they could test back in. Stuff like that. We'll break down which value we can actually accept, which we should reject, and get you set for Week 16. But first, a quick reminder to make sure you are entered into the listener league for this week. Go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league, FanDuel.com/league/listener league. $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake for this contest. So FanDuel.com/league/listener league. She's barking at herself again. Are you okay? Come over here. Hang out with me. She's very confused by that. Anyway, FanDuel.com/league/listener league. $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake for that to get yourself in on the action. Also, it's the holiday season, and that can mean only one thing. Santa Barkley is back. From now until December 27th, you have the opportunity to compete in free NBA daily fantasy contests on FanDuel for a chance to win cash prizes. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com and submit your best 9-player lineup into the Santa Barkley NBA free play contest and follow along as the games unfold with nearly $7 million. Wow. Worth of gifts being given out. Now is the time to get into the holiday spirit by heading over to FanDuel and participating in the 7 days of Santa Barkley. Age and location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at FanDuel.com.
I know we said before the show, because we got a lot to go over, that's going to keep the chatter to a minimum, but I just wanted to point out, and I thought you would appreciate this. When I heard Santa Barkley, I think the obvious play on words is like the Santa baby thing, but my mind first went to Santa Barbara because of Psych, and I thought you would appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. Thank you. I will take all. I was thinking Saquon Barkley. It's Charles. To be clear, his name was not actually. I'm not sure allowed to say his name because it's not weirdly not in there. Anyway, Santa Barkley, not Saquon. I don't think we're talking about Saquon today. So anyway, let's take a look at the slate overview for week number 16. And Brandon, to me, the key thing for this week is digging into each potential value option, deciding which we should accept and which we should reject, and being picky. I think that's the key thing for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think we really got to be picky with the values. So I'm piggybacking off of what you said, but the way that I think that I explain it to myself all the time is, where can I replace high-end performance with values? And if I can't, then I don't think that there's actually value there. So at running back, with potentially just Dalvin Cook at the top, we have Ronald Jones, Devin Singletary, a few other guys. They can probably replicate everyone other than Dalvin Cook on the high end. At quarterback, we have Patrick Mahomes, depending on how his situation goes. Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford. Can some of these other quarterbacks get there? If they can't, then I don't think that we actually have value. So basically saying the same thing as you, but really kind of making sure that we're not playing like low upside, just ready to bust value plays who aren't really set for good workloads.
Right. And I think that that's an important thing here because, like, you look at the Chiefs situation with no Tyreek Hill, no Travis Kelce, like, I could be like, oh, yeah, with Blake Bell out, too, I could talk myself into Noah Gray, but, like, do I need to? I could talk myself into Byron Pringle. Do I need to? I could talk myself into Mecole Hardman. Do I need to? And the answer could be yes to some of those. We'll talk about, the route for deciding that, but I can allow myself to be picky. And I think that's a key thing for this week and not force myself, because we've had slates this year where I've had to use guys I hated just because, I was in that situation. I don't think this is one of those weeks. So we'll break down what that all means in just 1 second. Speaking of the Chiefs, let's move now to the injury section. They are back on the main slate, but they may be without both Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. They are both currently on the COVID list, but they could test out before Sunday, meaning that there's a chance that they could play, but most likely I would think that they probably sit. We'll talk about them in the bookmakers section. The Bucs, big three who got hurt on Sunday night, are all likely out this week. Chris Godwin done for the year. Leonard Fournette may be done until the playoffs. Mike Evans did not practice Wednesday, but Antonio Brown was able to get into limited practice on Wednesday. His suspension is done, and he should be back this week. You'll go through that team in the trend section. Los Angeles Chargers have some COVID issues right now. This week, they put Austin Eckler and Jalen Guyton on the COVID list, which could mean that there are more to come potentially there. Joey Bosa on the defensive side is on the COVID list. He will not play this week. Brandon Cooks on the Texans is also on the COVID list. We'll talk about this game in the bookmaker section. Jared Goff is on the COVID list, entering a matchup with the Falcons. DeAndre Swift is back at practice Wednesday, though, meaning that he could be back this week from a shoulder injury. So let's talk about the Lions here. How would you handle them if Goff were to sit? And any interest in DeAndre Swift if he returns this week?
I was hoping to get Jared Goff because this game, as we joked about on Monday, was pretty appealing. I don't think it's very appealing now. If we're going to get a full game of Tim Boyle, though, that's a bit tough to wrap my head around on a full slate like this, even with all the other absences.
I saw a story from great beat reporter Dave Burkett for Detroit, and it was like, hey, the Lions kept the leash on Tim Boyle in this first start. They may allow him to do more in his second start, and I was like, I'm not sure how much more there is left to be done there.
Yeah, that's I mean, look, that I can't say we can talk about Jared Goff in a negative sense because at least one of us typically does not.
Well, how could you? I'm not going to lie.
Well, actually, one of our trend ideas was going to be about how the Lions were playing some good football. But yeah, Tim Boyle, I don't think that we can go there. He was abysmal in week 11. And that's a perfect example of, yes, we might get DeAndre Swift back, but if he's tied to Tim Boyle, I don't have a whole lot of interest.
Yeah, I think that like Swift, if it were tied to Goff, like if Goff comes back, then maybe we could potentially get behind that. Swift is $7,800. He does grade out decently well relative to the rest of the backs on the slate if we have Goff. If there's no Goff, that's tougher. How would you view Swift if Goff is cleared by Sunday?
So with running back looking the way that it does, I would have a good amount of interest, although 78 is kind of steep. That would be more of less of a core play, more of a game stack sort of play where I'm building around the Falcons as well, mostly Kyle Pitts in that context or Cornell Patterson just to, get that floated out there. But, I think that he would be on a fuller slate, not really someone that I would be aiming to play, but with running back being a little bit light at the top, that would vault him up.
Yeah, I think that he would be. I put him below James Robinson, who is 82, in that same range, facing the Jets. I'd put him with Goff. Yeah, sorry, with Goff.
Okay.
And then I'd put him above Mixon though if Goff plays. I'd put him above Patterson if Goff plays. Above Saquon, obviously, but below Sony Michel. So he'd be like a rotational piece, I would think, if Goff plays. And if not, then I just, I'm okay not touching these Lions. Lamar Jackson missed another practice on Wednesday due to his ankle issue. It seems like he has a chance to play this week, but doesn't help that he missed practice. They're facing the Bengals. It's a tight spread and a non-terrible total for this game. So what's your view of the Ravens and how does it shift with Jackson starting versus Tyler Huntley?
I like Tyler Huntley.
Yeah.
I can say that much.
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, this team is so concentrated that it's, is there enough to play Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown? And then are you going to play either quarterback? Lamar has been rough. I don't know what's going on. He hasn't been particularly good. This team has been playing a lot faster with Tyler Huntley under center, which I like for both sides of the ball. The Packers ended up running a decent amount of plays by the end of that game, but early on last week, they were not on the field very much. So that's kind of within the context of the full game. But either way, I think Mark Andrews is a slam dunk option, even at that high salary of $8,000. So it's there's a big difference in how this offense operates in terms of pace between the two quarterbacks. But because I'm over Devontae Freeman based on the workload we saw from him last week, it's more just a matter of, can I still play Mark Andrews either way? And I can.
Yeah, I think that I can too. What about Hollywood? No?
I don't hate it, but I don't
pivot off of. I think it'd have to be just a pivot off of Andrews. He's 64 and he has good market share still.
Yeah.
So it'd have to be just a pivot off of Mark Andrews for me.
I think and again, similar to a DeAndre Swift, who I know I guess had a good game in that Tim Boyle start, but I don't want to bank on that. This is a game that I don't hate. I kind of like the Bengals a bit. So I could see myself having more Marquise Brown than I would, originally think, because I like this game. And I'm going to talk about Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense a good bit. So at 6,400, Marquise Brown pairs well with Jamar Chase at 71 and or T Higgins at 65. So again, I'm going to be higher on Marquise Brown than I am in a vacuum because I like this game a decent amount.
If you have 10 Burrow lineups, what's your bring back distribution between Andrews and Marquise Brown?
Probably 6 Andrews, 4 Brown.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, Tyler Lockett has not been activated yet from the COVID list, but Pete Carroll said Wednesday they were expecting he would be soon, so we can expect Lockett to play this week. They are facing the Bears. Any interest in the Seahawks passing offense in that game?
Coming from someone who really talked up this passing offense in the peripherals, I hate to jump ship right now because it was bad in week 15. But this is a team that's playing on a short week, and I think that there's something to that we should at least consider factoring in. And obviously, Tyler Lockett is the guy, which is kind of weird. Just in the sense of that's no disrespect to Tyler Lockett. It's just more DK Metcalf's not really moving that offense. It's been Tyler Lockett. So I'm a lot higher on this offense with Tyler Lockett back, presumably,
Yeah.
I just don't know if I quite need to get there on this slate. So I'm probably not going to play Russ. I would consider Lockett for sure, though. And I think I might not. I don't know if I can talk myself into DK Metcalf anymore.
It's tough because like the shares for Metcalf are good. He has the same number of targets, or actually has one more target than Lockett since Russ returned. The games they've played together, 23% versus 22% target share. Lockett has double the deep targets, but Metcalf has a 30% red zone share. So the path to upside is still there. And I think that matters if he's going to go completely overlooked. I think that he benefits with Lockett being back just because that passing offense should be a lot more efficient. That's been his volume has not been the issue. It's been efficiency. And they should be more efficient with Lockett in there. So I think that he is interesting. Like I prefer him over Russell Gage, despite the fact that Gage is a very good matchup. I prefer him over, I guess Odell's in a really good game. I don't know. Mike Williams is getting good market shares again. T. Higgins is pretty great. So maybe I actually not as high in DK as I thought, just because like that mid 6,000 range is better than it's been almost the entire year.
Yeah. One thing that I need to do more, and I built this out for the sake of tracking it better this year, but an expected FanDuel points model just to see who's overperforming, underperforming in these small samples. And then, of course, I get caught up in who's producing and then,
right,
like a dummy. But in those 5 games with Wilson back, where they've both played, I do have pretty similar expected FanDuel points per game.
Yeah,
12.1 for Lockett, 10.6 for Metcalf, but Lockett's at 13.4 actual FanDuel points, Metcalf at 5.2. Metcalf's catch rate over expectations about 5 points lower than it should be, and not a whole lot of guys maintain high catch rate over expectation numbers. He should be able to. Lockett's been doing it. So like Lockett's overperforming with his workload. Metcalf's underperforming. So don't write off DK Metcalf if you like this passing game, if you like this game at all. But within the context of the full slate, really not a priority play, even though there's a lot pointing to positive regression coming for him.
Just weird vibes, but I think that it's weird. Adam Thielen able to get in a limited session on Wednesday for the Vikings. First practice for him since his ankle injury. We'll talk about them in the bookmaker section. Cole Beasley is on the COVID list of the Bills, which means he will be out on Sunday. Emmanuel Sanders took place in a walkthrough, or took part in a walkthrough on Wednesday. Mixed up the words there, meaning that Sanders can be back on Sunday. We'll talk about the Bills in the trends section. Damian Harris back at practice Wednesday for the Patriots. He was limited with his hamstring injury. Ramondre Stevenson missed practice, but that was due to an illness, which means he should be good to go. So are we good if we assume Harris is back to just write off this backfield
again? Yes, if Harris is back, I'm going to write it off for sure.
If Harris sits, would you go back to Stevenson?
I don't think so.
Last week was bad for his usage, but they were also in a negative script the entire game. I think that he would be. Week. Could be, yeah. I did bet the Bills, so $1,500 probably wouldn't get a lot of interest from people just because he did flop last week. But
Stevenson without Harris or Devin Singletary in the same game.
Probably Singletary, because Singletary doesn't have a Brandon Bolden equivalent.
Yeah.
Okay. Miles Sanders was practiced Wednesday due to a quad issue. Sounds like he'll be okay. If we assume that Sanders does play, what's your read on him and Jordan Howard versus the Giants?
So I'm pretty sure they ended up playing the same. He and Howard played the same amount of snaps.
Exact same, yeah.
In
part because he missed that final drive with apparently this. Like he's been banged up, but I think they were like, okay, close it out, Howard, and we'll let Sanders rest up a bit.
So I was going to say that's part of it, but Sanders actually had all 4 running back red zone carries in that game, which is very promising. He's still got to deal with Jalen Hurts and his ability to score multiple touchdowns on the ground, which I never like.
So if you want to account for that, I look at red zone share, which includes running or quarterback rushes. He was at 30% in that game, which is below average. It's not ideal, I would say.
Yeah. So I downgrade every running back who plays with a rushing. with a rushing quarterback, or more specifically, a quarterback who gets goal line carries. I think I do that for everyone, but aside from Christian McCaffrey. So
Yeah.
I'm going to downgrade Miles Sanders. There's still a chance that he loses some goal line work if he's not 100%. So I'm probably not going to chase it. And again, another team playing on a short week.
Right. He's gotten by recently on like crazy efficiency. The volume has been underwhelming when you do like what we do is we keep we double the target total to get adjusted opportunities.
Yeah.
When you do that, he's at about 20 per game in the 2 games with Howard. Like that's not great. He's at 120 yards per game, so he's been very good from that perspective, but it's tough. So I'm probably okay missing out. It does scare me a bit because like he has a path to 130 yards and a touchdown, which could hurt me, but I think with Ronald Jones there, with Singletary, Justin Jackson, like those guys,
Yeah, it is tough with like, look, we don't do film and like talent level stuff to a big degree. I know enough about film to know that Miles Sanders is a really talented running back.
Yeah.
But his role is not the same as like a Devin Singletary right now. And that has to factor in. He's overperforming like crazy, but that's not really enough for me to want to like hang the hat on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And his efficiency does increase with Hurts there because Hurts opens up rushing lanes, but still. Joe Mixon was able to get in a limited session on Wednesday, indicating he should be good to go after he sprained his ankle last week. You'll talk about the Bengals in the trend section. Kendrick Bourne is on the COVID list. Patriots typically a cross-off, but if Bourne were to sit, would that give you interest in any Patriots pass catchers this week?
That's going to be a no from me, dog. There's no upside in this passing offense. They've yet to have a 100-yard receiver in a single game. Bourne's gotten to 98 and 96. I don't really see a reason to play
Jacoby's got 98 and 94 and got 12 targets last week. He's now allowed to score touchdowns.
Are you going to play Jacoby Myers?
I hope not. So, like, I've got a lineup in front of me right now where I have 6,000 left for my final receiver slot. Ideally, I'd want to retool that to get up to T or someone else. Anyone else? Marquise Brown. But, like, in the 5,000 range, I could just go down to Gabriel Davis or something like that, or I could settle for, Jacoby Myers, I guess. I don't want to, and I probably won't, but like he's more of a consideration for me than he typically would be. That's the way I'd phrase it.
Yeah, I'll say this much. We have value on this slate. We don't have a whole lot of receivers in the 5,000 range who stand out to a huge degree. So within that, if you build a lineup and you really need to go there, or you build a lineup and you're at 6,000 or 5,800 left or whatever, and you already have Gabriel Davis, I could see that.
Yeah.
But that's it. He's not someone I'm like plugging into a cash game and feeling great about.
It's
sounds like he might
inspiring. She has tissue. Okay. Jamison Crowder missed practice on Wednesday. Typically, I wouldn't care about a Jets guy missing practice, but facing the Jags, so I might have to. Any interest in Braxton Berrios, Keelan Cole, Denzel Mims if Crowder sits?
This is another spot where, like, please don't make me do this. I don't want to do this. Jim's dealing with some stuff. I
muted myself for a second.
I'm trying to, like, brush off the Jets pass catchers, and I don't have a whole lot else to say, but
She's annihilating tissue right now, so she's being very mischievous and bad. And she's got the whole thing in her mouth. So we're going to go to bookmaker info. I'm going to ask you about...
No Jets for you then?
No. Okay. Pretty traditional game stack in Minnesota for the Vikings and the Rams. Total is 49.5. Rams are favored by 3. We tend to know who's getting the ball on both sides here. a luxury we haven't had recently. So are you checking this game out as a return to our game stacking process, which we've kind of had to abandon in recent weeks?
We have abandoned the usual process. This is the game of the week to stack in this manner, where we know where the ball's going. Good over under, tight spread. So yeah, this would be the only game I think at the moment that I would consider like a traditional game stack. Although Bengals Ravens might kind of fit there, which I'll talk about
That's
more.
Fair. Yeah.
Because I like Joe Burrow. I think there's a lot to like about him this week. But yeah, I mean, this is our bread and butter. And that kind of sounds dumb. It's like, hey, we like to stack games with high totals, tight spreads, and we know where the ball's going. But like that's that's what we do. What's your favorite stack here?
So I've been tinkering with this. So I said I had 6,000 left. That was in a lineup with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Justin Jefferson.
Love it.
I think that's pretty good. But like, I think realistically, my favorite one might be Stafford, Kupp, Dalvin, because Dalvin's my favorite running back on the slate outside of Ronald Jones. So I think it's one of those two. I'm undecided which way I would lean, but like, I think I would go Stafford, Kupp, Dalvin right now.
I probably would as well.
Yeah.
Which again is like, yeah, we're not dishing out the hot takes. Those will come later on in the show.
Yeah.
But you can't really look at this and say this is bad process to build around Cooper Kupp, who I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's just that good of a route runner, but I get frustrated sometimes whenever like who they want to throw, a team wants to throw the ball to. I get this way with Devontae Adams too. It's like, how's this dude just wide open, like sitting in the middle of his zone? Is he that good, or are teams just like not accounting enough for it? And it just frustrates me. But Cooper Kupp gets to do that, and that's awesome. So, boy, 116
it's a lot less
yards
frustrating when he's on your roster. I'll say
yes, it is. And look, I'm not a coach. I'm just analyzing DFS here, so I get it. But like, this dude's just kind of open a lot, and
yeah.
Double-digit targets in all but one game. In that game where he didn't get there, he had 9. He's scoring. He's getting yardage. Like, he can pay off without I think Jim's frozen for me. But he can pay off without a touchdown. I'm going to see if Jim's there. But if not, if I don't hear back from Jim in a second, I will proceed. I think I lost Jim. So, yeah, Cooper Kupp, great play this week. I think he stacks extremely well with Matthew Stafford. Not too big of an issue in terms of salary, even with Kupp at 98, because we have Ronald Jones and Devin Singletary so undersalaried.
All right.
Okay. Are you back? I hear Jim.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. I was gonna just keep going. I don't actually have a contingency plan for if you, bow out. But I was gonna move on to the next game and just kind of keep going with this.
So anyway, no, I want to talk about the ancillary pieces. Interest level in Thielen. You might have already talked about this. You already talked about it?
No, I was talking about Cooper Kupp being a great play and how even at his salary, like with like the combo of Kupp and Jones just kind of cancels each other out. So like, I don't think Kupp's salary is really restrictive.
Yeah. Okay. So interest level for you in Thielen. I was going to say Conklin. I don't even know if we need to talk about that. Interest level in Thielen, Van, Odell, and Sony Michel.
Pretty high. Like, this is just a good game overall. And I know that that's, a lot of names to consider, but there's a difference between, like, we know the ball's going to those guys at a pretty high market share number. With Thielen, I know in the past he's like played minimally and he would just come in the red zone and like have a red zone role. That's still appealing in a game where they should be in the red zone a decent amount.
Yeah.
That would not make me feel great about playing him. Realistically, I'm going to be underweight on Adam Thielen at 72. It's a bit high for a player who, I don't know the full health, and he's got 2 games with double-digit targets. There's some yardage juice there. The results have actually been a lot better than like Thielen of old, at least in the way that I view it. Like the touchdowns are there, and then there's about like that 80 yards potential. So I mean, I'll probably still be underweight on him. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I probably will too. Like if you gave me 10 game stacks here, I think I'd put Thielen in one versus like the others just being Jefferson and Cook, probably 5 Dalv, 4 Jefferson, 1 Thielen. I would still get Thielen in there because he has a 34% deep target share in the games he has played, 28% red zone share. That's still good enough at his salary. I think that the way I would do it, though, is just pair with Cup. Whereas with Cook and Jefferson, I want to get them with Van. I want to get them with Odell to get those combinations. With Thielen, I will just go like a full optimal, which would include Cooper Kupp in there for them. Let's go to the second game here, which is the Chiefs versus the Steelers. Chiefs ravaged. Oh, sorry. Let's put Sonny Michel. Let's do that first. I think Michel's actually pretty interesting for the slate. He kind of played out the way we expected last week, where I guess we had talked about, where he was the lead back still, despite Henderson being back. And I don't think that was because Henderson was coming off the COVID list, coming off an injury. I think it's just like he's better. 22 adjusted opportunities, 115 yards, 3 out of 4 red zone opportunities for the team. I think Michel is below Ronald Jones, probably below Singletary, definitely below Dalvin. But in that mid-range, he might be number 1 for me. What about for you?
Yeah, in that specific tier, he's number 1. The 71% snap rate, 18 carries, some target usage, just looked good. Had that at least one long run that I can recall. Darrell Henderson I remember him getting like hit and falling over pretty. And I mean, like I like Darrell Henderson when he was playing 85% of the snaps and getting a lot of work. Didn't like him as much as other people, but that's not really the case anymore. So I'm in on Sony at that salary. 69 is a bit too nice to pass up on Sony in this game with about a 70% snap rate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Okay, so let's talk about Chiefs now. Implied total is still pretty high on them, despite the COVID stuff. They're at 26 right now for their game with the Steelers. As of recording here Thursday morning, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill are on the COVID list. They could miss. They could be back. I think baseline assumption should be that they will not play. So are you looking at any of the fill-ins here? Are you crossing off Mahomes? Do we avoid the Chiefs entirely? Any bring back options on the Steelers? What's your view of this game?
The easiest place might be to start with the Steelers because there's just not an offense that I like. Yeah. And if this game's going to be like even more shuttered, not a big fan of anyone from the Steelers side. Najee Harris, has that Chiefs matchup. They're 31st in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, but Najee Harris really hasn't made me worry about using him. Or not using him, I guess. Pretty sure I saw a tweet from you on your day off about his red zone work being a lot worse. That's an issue. So I think for the Steelers, I don't really want to play them. I would be more open to it if we have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, just because of the idea that they'll need to throw the ball more. But outside of that, I'm not really in on the Steelers.
Yeah, it could just be a really gross game. The Najee thing was. He had a 40% red zone share in each of his first 5 games, and he has not hit that mark since then. So the red zone role has gotten just kicked in the crotch. And that's disappointing. I mean, like, I would go towards Deontay if I thought this game had a shot of, like, shooting out, but I don't think it does really anymore. He's $7,400. He's not low salaried. Let's talk about the Chiefs here. I think the one guy I might be willing to like check out as a result of these absences is actually Clyde Edwards-Helaire at $6,500. He would be a rotational piece more so than anything. I couldn't like prioritize him above Michel or anyone else, but could think about this in the sense that, okay, they're down some guys. Steelers' rush defense has been pretty bad. Maybe they decide to be a bit more run heavy this week. Did play, I think, 69% of the snaps in week number 15.
Correct.
The red zone role was still really bad, which is why I can't prioritize him. But I could see using him as like a rotational play in order to get exposure to a team that should still be pretty efficient with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So I think that'd be the one route I'd look towards. I don't really know if I really want to take stabs at Pringle, Hardman, Gray, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that CEH is at least interesting. What about for you among the guys who are remaining here?
Yeah, I was actually going to say I think that CEH is the most appealing, but because you talked about him, I won't stick on that point. But Byron Pringle has been running ahead of all of he's been the tertiary pass catcher, so he's been the third guy since the bye. Mecole Hardman's really fallen out of favor, running behind Demarcus Robinson as well. The routes last week were 73% for Pringle and Robinson, and 42% for Mecole Hardman. Hardman still does get a decent target per route rate, so I don't want to write him off entirely. We also know that he's been their number 3 early on in the season, so within this game, he might benefit from a more of a Tyreek Hill role especially than a Demarcus Robinson. So I wouldn't write that off, but that's really only if I'm building. I think I'm most likely to play a bunch of Chiefs receivers in the spots where I'm playing Stafford, Kupp, Dalvin, maybe also trying to jam in Justin Jefferson or getting Mark Andrews in that same lineup and just saying, I'm going all in on these superstars with high salaries and fantastic usage. I'm assuming that the mid-range is just not that particularly good, which is kind of scary because, like you said, the 6,000 range of receiver, actually really good this week. But I could see myself doing that with a Gabe Davis, Pringle or Hardman, Jacoby, but that's really about it. And we just don't have the running backs. I don't need it. I can't even, if I do that, then I don't have the running backs to get to. So,
I think that I prefer Hardman because he's the one getting the bigger role change. Pringle's already out there, so his role isn't really changing. Sure. It's just will he command a larger target share per route? And probably, but how much will it increase? I'm not sure if it'll be a ton. Whereas Hardman, I think that he would probably get 7-ish targets, which is not terrible for his salary. So I prefer Hardman over Pringle, but it's not a situation where I'm super confident in Hardman's role. The Chargers have their own COVID problems. Currently have the highest implied total on the slate, despite that. That's at 27.75 for their match with the Texans. Austin Eckler is currently on the COVID list. So are Joey Bosa and Brandon Cooks. Great matchup for the Chargers here. Do the COVID unavailabilities worry you for the Chargers side? Any bring back interest? What's your view of this one?
So I actually love Justin Herbert this week a lot. He's got the 10 days since playing the Chiefs on Thursday night in week 15. Playing the Texans. They need wins. I think that this all sets up really well for Justin Herbert with or without Austin Eckler. I would imagine that the efficiency numbers with Herbert's passing with Eckler on the field is better, which is not always the case for running backs. They don't always make a difference, but with Eckler, I'm sure it does. But Herbert, whenever I dug back, without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, was still actually pretty good either way. So I think it's just proof that he's a good quarterback. So I love the Chargers here. Have a lot of Chargers recommendations. And I don't want to write things off too much if I don't have Austin Eckler in terms of offensive expectations dropping out. But I don't know if I'm going to get to the running backs.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to get your feel for the running backs. I know Justin Jackson was the guy in week 15.
I was looking at their EPA splits with or without Austin Eckler, and they're very strange. So I'm not even going to say them.
Okay.
They're a lot better without him, and I don't think that's accurate. So I'm just not going to say it. I think that if you're looking at this offense, last year they had a situation where Eckler missed a bunch of games due to his hamstring injury, but the guys who were available constantly was changing. There was a 3-game sample in which Justin Jackson was active and Eckler was inactive. And in those games, Jackson averaged 12.3 carries and 5.7 targets per game. He got to 97 yards from scrimmage per game, which is pretty good, especially for a guy $5,400. But I think he had 1 out of, what number is this? 1 out of 24 red zone opportunities. They preferred to go to Joshua Kelly there. I'd expect Larry Roundtree to be active if Eckler can't go. So the touchdown upside is pretty muted, which means that he is tiers behind Ronald Jones in terms of value options. I would still use him. It would just be in a much more limited capacity, like a 20% rotational value play in the same mold of a CEH kind of, where I'm I'd like to use this guy a bit, but I don't want to go too crazy. Whereas Jones will be pretty much every lineup. I would say Jackson would be like a half tier below Singletary is where I think I'd be on that roughly. So still a good play, but not like a great play.
So basically, Ronald Jones tier 1, Singletary tier 2, Justin Jackson tier 2.5 among those value guys.
Yes,
I think that's about accurate. Yeah, because the touchdown concerns are the real issue, and again, Justin Herbert can score on the goal line, so that's a little bit of an issue paired with Justin Jackson's just historical trends of not really being much of a red zone threat. Although I will say, if you play Jones, Jackson, and Singletary with like a $3,900 defense, you got $7,900 left for 3 receivers, a tight end, and a quarterback. That's pretty nice.
That's getting you like Stafford, Andrews, Cup, and then like mid-range receivers. It's pretty good. So yeah, I can get behind that for sure. So Jackson's someone I'll definitely use if Eckler can't go. But I do want to make sure I'm accounting for those touchdown upside concerns. As far as the pass catchers go here, I agree with you where Herbert is a top 3 quarterback on the slate. I think that it's him, Stafford, and Burrow battling for the top with me. I think that Jalen Hurts is at least in that discussion as well. At quarterback, it's a good matchup. Typically, I'd worry about the Texans keeping pace, but I think given the scoring environment, I can't be as picky. So I think I just kind of have to accept it. The Chargers, I believe, are so I have like projected efficiency for each team. They are the number 1 team in projected efficiency by 0.02 net expected points per play, which is pretty good. It's a decent little gap over the Rams in second. So that means Herbert has to be in play. That means I have to be high in the pass catchers. I prefer, let's go with Mike Williams due to salary. I think that Keenan definitely works. But like if we look at the 2 games they've played where they're letting Herbert rip it a bit more and throw deep a bit more with Keenan and Mike Williams healthy, it's 25% share for Allen compared to 22% for Mike Williams. Mike Williams has double the deep targets and basically as many red zone targets. So that's the split that pushes me towards Williams here.
Yeah, love Mike Williams. Again, I have been down on him from weeks 4 through 12, 1 game with a target share of better than 20%. He's been at 20, 20, and 24% the past 3 games. That works. And I'm to the point now in the season where, you can talk about blowout potential and stuff, but the Chargers need wins, and that's going to come if they don't have Austin Eckler. It's going to come through Justin Herbert and the pass catchers. So, I'm getting to that point where I'm selling out for playoff implications a little bit early, and I think it's not going to be a big mistake. Although I did say last week, what are the odds Kyler Murray busts against the Lions? He did, but I don't see a whole lot of paths to a horrible game for Justin Herbert against the Texans.
I would agree with that as well. Okay, so let's move now into the trend section here for week number 16 and start things off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're kind of the other key source of value on the slate outside of potentially the Chiefs and the Chargers, depending on the running back news there. You're talking about what to expect out of this team with no Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans, no Leonard Fournette. It's a lot to go through, so I'll let you handle this one, and then we'll see where we wind up there.
Yeah, so this team is without a lot of big names on offense, and you and I will almost always say, hey, when this happens, downgrade the offense, which we're going to do. But if you still have Rob Gronkowski, you're getting back Antonio Brown. It's a little bit different than some other offenses, are dealing with. Ronald Jones expected for a big role, according to Bruce Arians, so you got to love that. Now, we'll have to do some guesswork to figure out what this offense will do because we have not had a game yet without Godwin and Evans. But in week 15 with Fournette, Godwin, and Evans all failing to get to 50% of the snaps, we saw a primary beneficiary in route rate. That's Tyler Johnson, who ran 94% of the routes. Rob Gronkowski was at 81%. Scotty Miller, 75%. Again, this was without Antonio Brown, but I think this reinforces the fact that if we're looking for one guy who really is slated for a big opportunity, it's Tyler Johnson over anyone else. And with Rob Gronkowski maintaining his role and Antonio Brown stepping into who knows, right? The reports are that he's looking good, but his workload has always been kind of hard to pin down, and it's always why I've been a little bit low on Antonio Brown, even though that costs me sometimes. He has played 5 games this year. He has once surpassed a 58% snap rate, and he's maxed out at 64%. So even with snap rates in 5 games between 45% and 64%, in the games that he's played, he has a 20.3% target share, which ain't bad for some like a full-time player, but he's playing again like roughly half the snaps, a little bit over that. He's averaging 2.2 downfield targets per game, so 20 plus air yards there. He's averaging 3.6 air yards per route, which is basically the same number as Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Tyler Lockett. His target per route rate of 29% is the same as Tyreek Hill's. If you assume the same role, it's still a good play. If you assume more snaps and more targets, he's a phenomenal play. So I think Antonio Brown just opens up, the salary's not prohibitive. Even if he is just his usual self, it's still a really good role. Tyler Johnson at 5,000, again, is a conversation, is like the biggest, beneficiary of these absences. Rob Gronkowski's role has been almost like wide receiver 1 for this team in recent weeks. I love him at 6,700, coming off of a down game, 2 catches on 11 targets. So I think we've got 3 pass catchers in play. And then we have Ronald Jones, who played at least 50% of snaps in 7 games last year. In those games, he averaged 16.9 FanDuel points, 24.9 adjusted opportunities through 18 carries and 3.4 targets, and 115.3 yards per game. You'll take that. That's awesome usage in a good offense still, with Antonio Brown coming back, Rob Gronkowski being there. Tyler Johnson is still a good player. So I love Ronald Jones. I'm not going to be alone in that. I know you love Ronald Jones. Everyone's going to love Ronald Jones this week, but it's based in like a very tangible, projectable role change. And we've seen him produce in similar spots last year. Love Rob Gronkowski, love Antonio Brown. I don't feel like we got to downgrade this offense too much. So am I too high on this offense without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, or am I not too high enough?
So not too high enough. That's so funny. Anyway, I think that it's fine to downgrade Brady to the point where I'm probably not going to use him.
Right.
But like the salaries on these guys in a situation where they'll likely be getting really big volume in a still efficient offense, like, no, you're not too high. I think that Jones is the best play on the slate at any position, any salary range. That's not a hot. That's just, It's like we were talking before, like we don't have our snake draft this week with JJ Zacharyson, but like if we had a snake draft, we agreed that Ronald Jones be the number 2 pick at running back behind Dalvin Cook. That's like how good he'd be without accounting for salary, with there being no salary. Once you add in his salary 54, just you load him in. He played 3 games last year without Leonard Fournette, 29 adjusted opportunities per game, 111 rushing yards or yards from scrimmage per game, 42% red zone share. You just can't turn that down. I know Jones has his detractors, as he should, because his role usually stinks, but I don't care right now. With Letty out, doesn't matter. So Jones, lock button type guy. I think that Johnson is very, 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 very close to Gabriel Davis as being the top value receiver of the week. You could very easily talk me into Johnson being above Davis if Davis generates a lot of attention as the value play, given that he's facing the Patriots. The Patriots are pretty tough. So I could see myself pivoting to Johnson if there's a massive roster rate discrepancy between the two. I think Antonio Brown is in a very good tier, still one of the best plays. So like other guys in that range are DK, Metcalf. Prefer Brown over Metcalf by a wide margin. Jamar Chase is there. I do like that game quite a bit, and you'll talk about that one later on. But I still think I prefer Brown there. Prefer over Hunter Renfrow by wide margin. Prefer him over Thielen, Deontay. I prefer him over Stephon Diggs. I prefer him over Keenan Allen. Like he's just a standout in that range.
Yeah, and you're going up in salary too, not down. Like
yeah, exactly. Because Brown's at 7,000. I was talking about guys who are in the upper 7,000. So yeah, I think he's great. I don't. And like Gronk is also great. So I can't really push back on you. I wish I could, but like I can't, honestly.
Yeah, I think the thing that I glossed over, I kind of had this implied to me, is I'm not going to play Tom Brady. I don't think that he's a terrible play by any means, especially if we get, again, we talk every now and then about quarterback popularity not really mattering because it's very flat and guys kind of max out at like 15%. So the leverage you get there is not really worth chasing too much. But, if we get Tom Brady at like very, very low roster percentages, I think that he's still a good, pivot play. But he's not going to make it as a top 3 play for me for this week. And I'm to the point now where I'm playing three quarterbacks at most in a given week.
I think the other way I'd phrase it is I will probably have $2 in a lot of lineups because Jones will just be in most of them. And I'm not going to let that scare me off of Gronk or Brown. So like I'm going to have 2 in a lot of lineups, I think is the most likely scenario here. Okay, let's move to my first trend here and talk about the Atlanta Falcons. They're facing the Lions, which is kind of the key point here. Their implied total is 24, which is not too bad. Matchup with the Lions is great, but there are some flaws on this Falcons team. So I want to dig into their recent usage and see what we should do with them here in Detroit. The flaws start with Cornell Patterson. His usage recently has been more similar to a traditional running back than the really fun hybrid player he was earlier on this year. If we look at the 4 games with that new role, he's at 78 yards per game. That is down from 92 before he got hurt back in week 10. He still has had upside, though. He had 135 yards to scrimmage in the first game in this stretch. He had 96 in the second, but his floor is really low, as we saw the past 2 weeks. He's still getting red zone work. It's a 40% red zone share in the 4-game sample. Patterson's salary is $7,200. He has the upside to be a tournament play, given the matchup. I cannot touch him in cash anymore. I can't consider him there. I was talking about like CEH. I think he's in that range. I prefer Justin Jackson relative to salary over Patterson, just because the imperfections around Patterson to me are pretty obvious right now. Other 2 viable guys here are Russell Gage and Kyle Pitts. Gage's role has expanded the past 7 games. If we look at that share or that split specifically, Gage has a 26% target share. Does have a 30% deep target share. That's better than it was previously. But his salary is up to $6,700. That is not nothing. It's a very good range at receiver this week. Pitts is 59. His target share is 21% in the split, 33% deep target share. Red zone share is 15%, which is not 0, although perception is 0, I think, on Pitts in the red zone right now. He had 3 red zone targets this past week, 77 total yards. So you talked about it on Monday. I kind of poo-pooed it, but I think that Kyle Pitts is in play this week. It's a good matchup. He has yardage juice. His salary is low. I think I like him most of this group. Patterson, rotational play. Gage, I'm souring on the more I think about it, given how good that tier is, which is weird because it's like the Lions, and I should like it more, but like I just think I think I need to be a bit picky, and that leads me to being highest on Pitts, meh on Patterson, and on Gage. What about you?
So all this boils down to like you kind of like Kyle Pitts, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that makes sense. I think he's my favorite play on this team. I liked this game a lot before the Jared Goff news. Again, I've been talking a little bit more about in-season regression and expectations and stuff. In that sample that you referenced with Russell Gage's workload up, he's overperformed his catch rate by 4.3 percentage points, which sounds low. But if you look at the guys who like maintain 5+, it's the superstar receivers. And I don't know. Russell Gage looked like a superstar receiver last week. He had some phenomenal catches. I'm not sure that he's quite that. And by contrast, Kyle Pitts underperforming by 6.5 points. I don't think that's going to last forever unless Kyle Pitts is just a guy. So,
yeah. And I don't think he's just a guy.
I don't think so either. He made he almost like stole an interception back for a catch last week. It was crazy, but he's underperforming his FanDuel points numbers as well. I think that Kyle Pitts is the top play here. He might be the only Falcon I end up playing a substantial amount of because Goff's out, and I don't think I'm going to play a lot of Lions as a result.
Yeah.
But the question then becomes, how does Kyle Pitts stack up against Mark Andrews and the other stud tight ends? I don't think he's that far off. I just wish that based on the production, the salary was lower, but I get why it's not.
Yeah.
59 is a little bit steep, but it's really not like, you know, I'm going to play Kyle Pitts. I think he's the best play here. I think there's a lot to like with that regression that I've been talking about. So
I
it's
also
kind of
don't think
Pitts
I
or
want to
bust.
go lower than Pitts at 59.
I don't either.
Like, Goddard, like, he's been great, but like, it's so hard to trust passing game pieces there because if they had their way, they wouldn't throw. And like that game on Tuesday or whatever day, I don't know, Tuesday, the reason that they threw is because they kept messing up. And like that kept them in a very neutral script. Like, what if they get ahead? He could have 3 targets. So I think Pitts over Goddard for sure. Pitts over Hunter Henry, despite Henry playing really well recently. Pitts over Dawson Knox. So I think it's like Andrews, Gronk, Pitts as like the top 3, the pillar 3 at tight end this week. Do you agree?
Yeah, I might not play any other tight ends than those 3, which I usually disperse things out a little bit more at tight end, but
Yeah.
I think those guys make a lot of sense from a market share standpoint, opportunity standpoints, and I have the salary. If I go, look, I'm gonna play 100% Ronald Jones, and just whatever happens. I'm gonna be pretty high on Devin Singletary. I'm warming up more and more to Justin Jackson, even with the red zone concerns because the salary is so low. So I'm gonna have the salary to get to Gronk and Andrews plenty. So I might just play those 3.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if I wound up being there. I might have Knox. Actually, no, I probably shouldn't. Anyway, apparently when I froze earlier, I was in a weird pose. The NFT god on Twitter took a picture of it and sent it to me on Twitter. It's not a flattering face. I might make it my Slack profile picture though. So thank you, the NFT god, for screenshotting that and saving this beautiful moment in history where I was scratching my nose and trying to make sure my dog was not going to annihilate another tissue. Anyway, let's move on to your second trend. Talking about the Bengals. I think this game's pretty fun. And I think you talked about this being the other game you'd look to stack other than Rams Vikings in a traditional sense. I kind of agree. So talk me through this Bengals offense, why you like them, what you're viewing in this game.
Yeah, so the specific trend name I have is the Bengals against bottom tier pass defenses with low pressure rates, which is very specific, but it kind of fits because the splits for the Bengals have been really separated. Like their matchups have been either really tough or really good. And one of those good matchups came against a really high pressure rate team. And like if you take that out, things get a lot better. Long story short, the Bengals are matchup dependent, and that's okay if we have the right matchups. In 3 games against top 12 pass defenses, Joe Burrow's averaged 15.9 FanDuel points. In 5 games against mid-tier pass defenses, so cutting off the top 12, bottom 12, 16.4. In 6 games against bottom 12 pass defenses, 18.9. And if you cut out that 1 game against a high pressure rate team that was also in the bottom 12 in adjusted pass defense, 20.5 FanDuel points per game, 300 passing yards per game, 2.6 passing touchdowns per game. And funny enough, all those games that fit the low pressure rate, bad pass defense, mold, those were all week 8 or earlier. So it's been a while since we've had Joe Burrow in this offense in a good matchup, one that they can exploit. That fits with the Ravens this week, who are 20th in pressure rate, 23rd in adjusted pass defense based on numberFire's metrics. And I like that despite this being a second time around divisional matchup. Again, it's just been a while since we've seen Joe Burrow at his best, and I think we get it this week. Baltimore's 26th in passing ADOT allowed, average depth of target, 21st in yards per target allowed on downfield attempts. So they don't really limit downfield throws. They're also not efficient at stopping downfield throws. They're about, 21st is not an outlier. It's close enough to league average, but the point is they're not good at that. And that's what we should take advantage of. Since a week 10 bye, T. Higgins does have a team high 24% target share, 39% air yard share. Jamar Chase down to 20% of the targets. Tyler Boyd's up to 19.3%. C.J. Uzomah actually 15% target share, which is solid for a tight end in a spot that is, not that bad. Now we've really seen Chase fall down the ladder and Higgins be much more efficient on higher volume, despite Chase running more routes, 97% to 90% for Higgins and 89% for Boyd. But Chase has a 38% red zone target share and a 67% end zone target share in this sample. Chase has barely overperformed his catch rate. I think it's safe to say that he's good enough to do that long term. So that's kind of a regression spot for Chase. with the red zone usage, touchdowns could be coming. I know he went off against the Ravens for over 200 yards. I think that this is like just a bounce back spot for Chase. While it's a lot easier to justify playing T. Higgins, I think Jamar Chase is the better tournament play. T. Higgins rating out as the better sort of cash game play. With Joe Mixon, he's played on 67% of snaps in this span. The workload's been good. He's apparently feeling good, according to head coach Zach Taylor. If we get word that Joe Mixon's like a full go, I'm pretty into that, but I don't think that I'm going to get there with the running backs being what they are. More importantly, I'm in on Joe Burrow, whose salary is only $7,100. That's super low because he's played a ton of tough defenses lately and hasn't performed. Jamar Chase 71, T. Higgins 65. I'm going to play a lot of those guys, and then we can bring it back with the Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown. So am I stupid to jump back in on the Bengals, or is there enough to like here?
No, I love it. I think the key thing for me, in addition to what you mentioned, is that the Ravens are really good against the rush, and that may encourage Zach Taylor to be less run heavy than he has been recently. And that could have been because of matchups. I don't want to besmirch him and
I know. Do we have another NFT coming?
I think maybe. I don't know. I think that because the Ravens are good against the rush and not that good against the pass, I feel like that may encourage them to throw more, and that makes you feel better about this Bengals offense. So that to me means I think the Bengals are a pretty clear priority and a team that I feel very good about.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a lot of Bengals, and I'm going to just see what happens. I wish I had more reason to save or to need salary at running back, but look, even with value at running back, I still want to play Dalvin Cook. I don't want to make that I don't want to lose that in the grand scheme of things. Cooper Kupp's salary we can get to, but if you want Cooper Kupp stacked with Justin Jefferson, that's difficult. So Joe Burrow is going to go a long way for me, especially if we run it then back with Marquise Brown, whose salary is justifiable. So, this is just I think the second best game to stack, despite the fact that, we have multiple value pieces from Buffalo. I'm not going to play the Patriots. So that's not a game stack. This could potentially be a 2 QB game, which we don't have a whole lot of. So I'm in on this game as the number 2 behind the Rams and Vikings. I think Jim's out again. All right, it's just me. So I can't really transition into the next trend because that's Jim's trend. So I see Jim's messaging me. All right. Okay. So
we're back.
All right. I was about to launch into some stuff. So I'm glad you're back.
I have no idea what you were talking about. So let's talk here about my second trend. Talk about the Bills versus tough defenses, because we're going to want some Bills in our lives this week, but they're facing the Patriots. That's a really tough matchup. They are ranked second in schedule adjusted defensive efficiency. So I want to dig in and see how the offense has fared in similar spots this year. They've had 9 games versus teams ranked in the top half of the league in schedule adjusted defense. In those games, the Bills have averaged 27.2 points per game. It's a very good number. They scored 26 or more points in all but 2 of those 9 games. Josh Allen's passing net expected points per dropback in those games is 0.16. League average now is down to 0.09, which is upsetting. So Allen has been good. They've scored points. Those are the key things that matter for us in terms of value plays. The Patriots are a little bit better than just top half defense. So let's narrow it down to the top 10 defenses. Bills have faced those defenses 4 times. And in those games, they've scored at least 27 points 3 out of 4 times. The one game they didn't get to 27 was that win game against the Patriots. So, it was against this very same defense, but obviously a very interesting, unique situation there. Allen's passing net expected points per dropback in those games does slip a bit down to 0.10. So they're scoring points for the most part. Allen, not the most efficient. I can live with that when I'm looking for value here. And that is the key focus for me with the Bills is the value plays. I just need the offense to be solid. And the numbers say I can believe the Bills will do that this weekend. So I'm not going to sweat it too much with Devin Singletary and Gabriel Davis. And I'm inclined to use both these guys here. I think Davis grades out below Singletary for me. I'd like to use the value backs in order to spend up at receiver. I think that's the way I want to play things for this week. That's the key differentiator for me between Davis and Singletary, or is that I just prefer to spend down at back versus receiver. What about for you? What's your confidence in the Bills? How you viewing this one?
Not a ton of like overall confidence, but it's enough because the only plays I'm really interested in are Davis and Singletary. I'm not really there with Stephon Diggs at this point.
Yeah.
The market share is just not good enough to justify the salary. And even the upside from him is kind of muted because he's not getting funneled targets like he has been in the past. So it really comes down to Davis and Singletary. And then for me, yeah, I'm with you. Like I'd rather save salary at running back, which is like not what we typically do.
Right.
But in this week, we don't have multiple superstar running backs. We have one most likely with Dalvin Cook. And we can replace a lot of the Cornell Patterson, DeAndre Swift type roles with lower salaried backs, which we cannot usually do early on in the season. So that's the key difference. And with receivers really kind of separating, even in the 6,000 range, it's a week where I want to prioritize the value backs, and that's what gets me on Singletary. I don't think I want to play Josh Allen at all, and I don't feel too concerned there.
No.
So it really comes down to like, do I feel good enough for Singletary and Davis? And I do.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Same thing with Diggs as well. We're not really looking to get there. So I think that it is just about those value guys. And I've seen enough from this offense to feel good about them in this spot. So Singletary in the top 3 or 4 at running back for this week, considering salary. Davis, arguably the best value receiver alongside Tyler Johnson, but I would just prefer to be there less often than I am with the running backs. Okay, let's take a look at...
And you don't care if Emmanuel Sanders comes back. That doesn't really affect your view on Davis.
I think he was going to get benched for Davis had he not gotten hurt. So we talked about that going to that week. Not we to, did. But we talked about that. So I think he's fine. Weather for this week, there are some spots to note. Starting off with that Pats-Bills game, there's a chance of rain there. Winds are at 12 miles per hour. Nothing of concern right now, but I would check back on that one later on Sunday. Winds are at 18 miles per hour in New Jersey for the Jets and the Jags, ruining all of your plentiful game stacks there. Winds are at 17 miles per hour in Philadelphia for the Eagles and the Giants. Again, big passing game options for the Eagles and the Giants. So, massive implications. 11 mile per hour winds in Seattle for the Seahawks and the Bears. Nothing too concerning there. And winds are at 16 miles per hour in Kansas City for the Chiefs and the Steelers. That would help justify my being lower on them. So I kind of hope that wind sticks. That would be quite helpful if it were to hang around.
Nice Jared usage.
What did I say?
My being low.
Oh, yeah. I always get weirded out by that one because no one says that. And so I feel weird when I do it because it's they'll think that I'm wrong. And I'm always concerned about that.
Yeah. But you would say I won't. The examples that came to my playing too much Chris Conley is an issue. Same thing. You wouldn't say, some people say me playing, but
be playing Chris Conley. Anyway, let's go positional plays. Let's end this forsaken podcast.
This has been a bit of a train wreck.
The cursed podcast. Welcome to week 16.
Let's
go to quarterback. What you got there?
All right. I'm going to go Justin Herbert. 84. I just sometimes it comes down to the best matchups and everything. Sometimes it comes down to I'm going to play a really good player in a spot where his team needs to win, coming in off extra rest, but they also get a good matchup. Bottom 10 adjusted pass defense. Herbert in those spots, 278 passing yards, 1.8 touchdowns, 0.09 passing net expected points per dropback over expectation. Overall has been, twice the league average in that span. So he takes advantage of these matchups. Just feels like a really narrow path to busting. I know I said that last week again with Kyler, but I won't regret playing a lot of Justin Herbert in this spot. So I feel
I don't regret playing Kyler last week. It's same thing with Herbert here. Yeah, I agree.
And then I also love Joe Burrow. He opens up a lot, really helps you get to Cooper Kupp. I just want to make sure that not all of my Joe Burrow is tied to Cooper Kupp, although Cooper Kupp feels like he's just locked in for 20.
I've had lineups tied to worse stuff. So yes.
Yeah. Really think there's a path to a big game as I laid out in this specific type of matchup, which we just haven't had for the Bengals. for quite some time. It's just been a lot of tougher matchups for Burrow. I don't think the hand issue is that much of a problem anymore. He looked pretty mobile too last week. Just didn't take advantage of that matchup. And he pairs well with his receivers at good salaries. So I'm good there, and he shouldn't face a whole lot of pressure, which again is a big part for Joe Burrow in this offense.
Yeah, I also have Burrow as one of my loves because, again, the Ravens being run heavy or being good against the run may force the Bengals to be more pass heavy here. And I think that's a positive for them. And again, they've shown at times this year they will be pass heavy when the situation dictates they should be. So I think that gives me faith here in $7,100 in dealing high on Burrow. I don't need to spend down at quarterback given the number of running backs we have that are low salary. But if using Burrow allows me to go with like T. Higgins, Mark Andrews, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, something like that, sick. Like sign me up every time.
If you play the Jones, Jackson, Singletary, 3,900 defense, Burrow, you got your 3 receivers and a tight end, and you get 8,100 left.
Sick. Let's do it. Let's party.
That's fun.
I just figured out a lineup in my head using that, but I feel pretty good about it. Okay. Other quarterback I had was Matthew Stafford. It's a very traditional game stack where it's a high total, a tight spread. It is indoors. Stafford hasn't topped 30 FanDuel points yet this year, but he's shown the building blocks necessary to get there. The Rams rank second on the slate in projected efficiency for me behind the Chargers. So I think Herbert, Stafford, Burrow, the core 3 for me this week, and then Jalen Hurts, I gave some decent thought to putting as a player pick for this week. Didn't quite get there, but he is probably going to be at least a limited feature in my player pool on Sunday, but he would be the 4th option there.
We're not that far behind on like time wise. If people ask why we're low in Jalen Hurts or like low-ish, not to have him like as QB1,
he's dependent on several things breaking his way, like touchdown variance breaking his way, which is true for everyone, but I think it's more true for him than others.
Yeah, for a guy he had 296 yards in week 15, but before that, 129, 147, 178, 162, 103.
And he did that against a team that was missing like all their starters on the COVID list.
Yeah. But it did it on 24 pass attempts. So it's basically like a Russell Wilson passing performance with like 11.4 yards per attempt with also 2 rushing touchdowns, which like obviously the multiple rushing touchdowns in the range of outcomes for him. But without that, he's a different performer, and I don't really want to tie myself. I don't want to have to assume multiple rushing touchdowns for a team that just doesn't want to throw the ball.
I agree. So he'll be 4th for me, but that's why he's not higher. So let's go to running back. What do you have there?
I'm going to go with Dalv. I will still play him a lot. I'm not going to play 3 value backs in every lineup, but he is the guy who can really make us regret not using him. I think, honestly, Ronald Jones is like in that conversation just in terms of high-end FanDuel point outcome.
Yeah.
But Dalvin, 28 carries last week, just 89 yards, 3 targets for 2, 4 red zone carries, managed just about 10 FanDuel points despite my model saying he should have had 23.4. If he was doing that, I think we'd feel a little bit differently. If he did that last week, we'd feel a little bit differently about him coming in. Just could be the lone guy. And then, of course, Devin Singletary and Ronald Jones are my other guys. Singletary, 83, 92% of the snaps the past 2 games. Good enough workload. 13 carries, 4 targets, 93 yards per game. Getting red zone work. New England's not a great matchup to target, but I still think that the offense is good enough to move the ball as you laid out. And then Ronald Jones just has been awesome whenever he's been a featured back. It's actually been a little bit better efficiency-wise than Leonard Fournette this year and last year.
How dare you?
I know, we love Lenny, but
we can be pro Rojo without besmirching our fearless leader, Leonard Fournette.
Yes, this was less a shot at Leonard Fournette and more a vote of confidence for Ronald Jones to do something
lightly. Tread lightly. That's all I say.
Playoff Ronnie.
No. Full exposure, Ronnie. We'll go with that. Yeah. I have him as my love as well. I just again, the numbers of that Fournette last year were stupid. 42% red zone share, 111 yards from scrimmage, just a lot of carries, 4.3 targets per game. Gio is on IR, which means it's basically just Rojo and Keyshawn Vaughn. I don't expect Le'Veon to play a big role, shockingly. So Rojo is one of the best running back plays we've had all year. Dalvin Cook is my first love as well. He was yours. He's the one true feature back here if Eckler can't go. He's at 127 yards from scrimmage per game in his full games this year, 46% red zone share, high total, tight spread, all the salary to get there, so I will do so. The one unique one I had compared to you was Sony Michel. I think that his workload on Monday was good enough to give me confidence that Tuesday was good enough to give me confidence that he will be good enough to be worth his salary at $6,900. He had 115 yards in scrimmage, 3 out of 4 red zone chances. I'll go back there. There is some risk that Henderson's role could expand, but like I think they just like Sony more, so I'll go there. I think that if I like for single entry, where people are probably going to go Singletary, Jones, maybe Dalvin, I want to get Sony in there potentially to be a little bit different. I could see him going overlooking that kind of format because he's in the middle, kind of in purgatory there.
I like it. And honestly, based at this point in the week with the information we have, 11:15 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, December the 23rd, I think I'm maxing out at 5 running backs with Dalvin, Sony, Ronald Jones, Singletary, and Justin Jackson. I don't know if I'll play another running back.
I'll play James Robinson. We actually haven't talked about him. He's facing the Jets. I know the salary is high. I know the team is bad, but it's the Jets. 85% snap rate, 52% red zone share in games that high. So I know there are issues. I'm going to use him. I know we've not talked about him, but I will use him. I just need to rank him below Dalvin. Got to rank him below Jones. I'll rank him below Sony, but I think he's right there with like Singletary in them.
This feels like an anti-Jim take, like a Jim 2.0 sort of take, I guess.
Wait, why?
Because the salary's high. I know that doesn't matter as much this week, but the implied team total is low. The offensive expectations are just super low.
Are they? They're facing the Jets.
21.25. It's not good.
I mean, it's not bad. They rank 16th for the entire week in projected offensive efficiency. If you're getting a featured back to rank 16th for the entire week, and one kind of teams that are not in the main slate that are ahead of them.
Well, I guess, look, in your defense,
2,
the Vikings...
3, 4, 5. 5 of the teams, they're 11th on the main slate in projected offensive efficiency. Nothing wrong with that.
So average. But I guess like somehow the Vikings have an implied team total of 23.25. So
yeah, I'm going to use Robinson. I will have him below Dalvin. I'll have him below Rojo. I think he's on par with Sony.
Yeah.
I think he's worth it. I think he's worth it.
6 guys then. But 6. That's it.
Cutting it off there. You will not talk me into anyone else. Let's go to receiver.
That's not even a bit. I really don't think that I would.
No, I gotcha. Go ahead.
I was considering Jamar Chase here, but I'm going to go Antonio Brown. He is just, look, whether the results are there or not, the situation is fantastic at 7,000. Plenty of upside in the role. And even if the role doesn't expand, we're looking at a 20-ish% target share. I think that has to go up, like just being realistic. Reports are that he's good to go. He's looking healthy. Has some time to, recover, I guess, even if he's still, got the tag, but seems good to go. I laid it out already. Antonio Brown at 7,000, and I'll play him with Ronald Jones. I don't care. Like you said, second level is Mike Williams at 6,600. I don't think I'm going to lay off the Chargers much at all this week. His role has been getting better with 20, and 24% target shares the past 3 games. Since 24th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to receivers. Might prefer T. Higgins, but either way, both are guys I'm going to play a lot of. And then Gabriel Davis, 5,300. Don't really care because if Emmanuel Sanders returns, Cole Beasley's out. Davis had a team high 92% route rate with 7 targets, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, 130 air yards, 2 deep targets, 2 red zone targets. That's awesome usage. The matchup's not fantastic, but 5,300 is.
Yeah, I think that he is either 1 or 2, probably 1. But like if he winds up being, if there's a massive roster rate discrepancy, then I'll go Tyler Johnson, who is my third love. So we'll start there. Talk about him. I think that like I will let roster rate decide where I go here because both these guys have paths to failure, and I'm okay letting popularity play a role in my decision-making process there. Johnson was getting snaps even when other guys were healthy, and it wasn't just snaps. It's not like a Jalen Guyton type thing. He was getting some targets too. He has 6+ targets in 3 games this year. He had 7 against the Saints last week. His 8 out of 7.7, it's not huge, but it's high enough. So I will take that for sure and be okay with Johnson. Probably prefer Davis by a bit because all the high leverage work, but I would go Johnson if the roster rates were massively different. My first level receiver is Cooper Kupp. I can get to him via the value at running back. He has a 36% target share in games with Odell Beckham this year, or in games where Odell's been a full. The first game doesn't count. He has 44% of the red zone targets in those games. He's very doable. It's a great game to stack, so I want to get to Cooper Kupp. My second love is T. Higgins. If we look from week 5 on, so since he returned from shoulder injury, he has 24% of the overall targets, 32% of the deep targets, 20% in the red zone. He's got 100+ yards in 3 of the past 4 games, facing a super beat up secondary. You said you might prefer Higgins over Mike Will. I'd have a really hard time deciding. I think they're both phenomenal. And that's why I talk myself out of Metcalf at 67. I think that it's a lot easier to talk myself into these guys versus him. I think Brown's better than both by a bit, right?
Antonio Brown over
Mike Williams and T. Higgins.
Yeah, I think Antonio Brown is like on the same plane if you would count for salary as Cooper Kupp.
That's fair. I can't push back on
that. I can't really wrap my head around a spot where Antonio Brown's role is the same and he's playing like half the snaps unless he really is hurt, but that doesn't seem like that's the case. So I'm pretty in on Brown at that salary.
Okay, let's go to tight end. What you got there?
I'm going to stick with the Bucs here and go with Rob Gronkowski. I think that his role has been very good overall this season. Again, that should expand or at least stay the same, and I'm cool with that. It's Gronk 67 with a great role, coming off of a down week though too. 11 targets, 2 catches, catch rate over expectation of 43.6 percentage points below expectation. Should have had about 14 and a half FanDuel points. Yeah, I know. Though I've learned quickly that 1 week catch rate over expectation numbers are crazy high. And that's why when I tried to figure out where big games from receivers come from, it's really impossible. It's just basically who converts on the targets and who doesn't. It's really what it comes down to. And since his week 11 return, 26.3% target per route rate. Again, Tyreek Hill is at like 29%. League leaders are at like 31%. It's a really good role for him. My second love was going to be Dallas Goedert. I got to take your guy too, Kyle Pitts. It's just we talked about it. The role's good, and one of the reasons I was a little bit slow to talk about Gronk was I was running my regression numbers because I was just curious as to how many touchdowns he should have. He has 1. He should have 6.2 according to my data. Something's got to give. The red zone work's been there. I don't think it's crazy to think there's like a multi-touchdown game coming for Kyle Pitts soon.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's a week, given that relative to what a usual Atlanta implied total is, this one's very high. And part of the reason he hasn't scored touchdowns is because they haven't scored. That Cornell Patterson touchdown being called back last week was a backbreaker for me. So, they're just a bad offense, but they should be less bad this week given the matchup. So that's why I like Pitts. 77 yards last week. He's had 6+ targets in all but 2 games this year. So if I'm not going to get to Andrews or Gronk, I think that the best route here is going to Pitts at $5,900, allowing myself to go nuts everywhere else. I do want to get to Mark Andrews a lot, though. He is my other love at tight end. Just a stupid role right now. He has double-digit targets in 5 of the past 7 games. He has had at least 8 targets in each of the other 2, so 8+ in 7 straight. He has a 27% target share in games with Marquise Brown since the bye week. He has a 30% target. What are you trying to get? Okay, she's on the counter. Sorry. He has a 30%.
Counter?
She had her paws up there. She's being
okay.
Yeah, no, she's too tall for her own good. He has a 30% deep target share with a 27% share in the red zone. I'm gonna take that every time. He's a cyborg, so sign me up for Mark Andrews in a really good game to stack. Let's finish up with defense. What you going to there?
We'll go with the Falcons at 38. I like the game I like the game more, but if there's going to be some back and forth, some potentially good and bad offensive plays, you like that for defenses. Sacks and turnovers lead to FanDuel points, and they're getting either Jared Goff on like a short week or Tim Boyle, which I'll take.
You made it sound as if like Jared Goff is a good thing for an opposing defense. How dare you? Again, we don't besmirch our boy who has a .20, passing that expected points per drop back since Josh Reynolds joined the team, Brandon.
But he won't have a full week.
I don't care.
Of prep.
Jared Goff needs 5 minutes. We're good. Are you
going to play him then if he plays?
No. No. My love at defense is the Raiders. They're facing Drew Lock. That's the analysis. That's all I really need to say. So
they were the 3,900 defense I've referenced a few times throughout the show.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just go Raiders. If it's Boyle, you go Falcons. I think you just make it very easy on yourself. Obviously there are other options we could like. I think Cincinnati's in play at $3,500 facing the Ravens in situations where I don't get to the Ravens. Just because they can produce some turnovers for sure. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the Broncos defense against the Raiders because the Raiders are also not great themselves. Fine with that. Otherwise, looking at other stuff. But I think that for defense this week, we can pretty safely stay below $4,000 and not fret too much about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, so that wraps up our positional plays and this Week 16 preview podcast. Before we close up shop, though, Brandon, any final words for you for the good listeners before they fill out their lineups this week?
The thing that really jumped out to me is rank at salary the running backs to see how high or low Dalvin Cook is for you relative to a Justin Jackson. It sounds really fun to play Justin Jackson so you can play Cooper Kupp, but if that comes at the expense of playing zero Dalvin Cook, then, maybe think about that. Do the 2v2s that I typically talk about and go from there.
Yeah. And be picky. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Jackson, because of the red zone stuff. Think about the paths to failure for different guys. And if you don't see a lot of paths to failure, sick. But if you see paths to failure, ask yourself, what are the odds those paths hit? And then decide based on that. That is all that we have here for today. We will have a recap podcast coming your way on Monday. That'll be at 9 a.m. Eastern. Same place, same time as usual on the FanDuel YouTube page. Up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. Our final recap podcast of the year because no point in recapping Week 17 leading to Week 18. So final recap podcast of the year coming up on Monday. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts to get that podcast right as it goes live. Also, Tom Vecchio talking NBA and NHL DFS. We got UFC, PGA coming back, of course. A lot of good stuff here. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone tuning in for this week. Happy holidays. Stay safe. Stay healthy. What?
He kept freezing, and it would have been perfect. As soon as I finished, you froze, and I was like, "This is gonna be a perfect way to end the show if you freeze once more on the side out."
So you didn't freeze for me, so the podcast listeners weren't going to know because I was going to clip out all the other frozen
I'm sorry,
stuff.
There was a delay.
All right, well, we're going to find...
This is why I can't host the show.
I think I do need to change that frozen screen grab that the NFT god got and make that my avatar. We'll work on it. I'm wiping my nose. It's a train wreck. This has been a train wreck week. We're going to close up shop and say goodbye to all of you right now. Good luck to you with your Week 16 lineups. Hopefully it goes better than this podcast did. We'll talk to you all once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.